Hello friends, Dan Payne here with your 2020 Congregational Meeting Financial Report. The concept of God's people giving a tenth or a tithe of their increase to support the ongoing worship activities of the church body was established by God in Numbers and Deuteronomy. We're grateful to the congregants of Blue Ridge Community Church for being so faithful in their regular giving so that we can continue to operate the church under the leading of the Holy Spirit. The simple fact remains that there are various expenses that are incurred in maintaining and operating a church. Your elders take the responsibility of being good stewards of these tithes and offerings very seriously. To help monitor our ongoing expenses, we established a budget for each fiscal year with the help of a finance committee. I want to thank Kim Housel, Stephen Livingston, Jim Lefebvre for joining me in that committee and helping formulate a budget. I also want to thank Sandy Payne, who handles the ongoing church financial operations, for all her help and input in this process. While our hope is that the way we use our funds reflects our ministry priorities, how our money is spent only reflects a portion of how the total church body resources are applied to ministry. Our largest and most effective ministry resource continues to be the time and efforts of you, our ministry volunteers. We're extremely grateful for all the time that you put into activities like teaching, Sunday school, ushering, praying for the church and individuals, working in the nursery, leading home groups, conducting musical worship, greeting, serving communion, and a variety of other things that I could mention here, a lot of which go unseen, but are vital to the life of the church. And we thank you for not only your financial contributions, but especially for the time you put into making our church work. Those volunteer hours can't be quantified. We're grateful for your faithful service. With that said, my purpose here is to report on the church finances. Attached to this email, there should be a link to a document called Congregational Financial Report for May 2020. That'll look a little bit like this. Following along in this document may help you understand my report. The document format is pretty simple. The first column is our budget for the 2019-2020 fiscal year. Our fiscal years run from April to March each year instead of the calendar year. Column 2 is our actual income and expense for that same year. And then column 3 is our projected budget for the coming year. The first thing you may notice if you've printed this out and looked at the figures is that our actual tithe and offering income for last year was $33,048.80 below our projection. Before you get too concerned, our expenses were also below projections. We did end the year with a $3,282 deficit, but fortunately we have the reserves to cover that. The picture given by this is not as bad as it first appears. Each year we base the projected income for the coming year on the actual giving from the prior year. Our annual giving does include your regular tithes and offerings, but it can also include one-time gifts or special gifts from individuals that probably won't be reoccurring. And while we know these specific gifts aren't reoccurring, in the history of BRCC, these things seem to happen year in and year out. And we don't have a real good way to budget for them, so we are left with just using prior year's numbers. For the 2018-2019 fiscal year, our special gifts, or one-time gifts, totaled about $45,000. If we had not factored that amount into our 2019-2020 budget, we would actually seen an increase in regular giving over what the regular giving was in the prior year. So that is an encouragement. We're actually seeing a slight incline in our giving. As you look at those numbers, you may also be wondering why we're projecting an income that's slightly below the 2019-2020 actual tithes and offering income. When our committee met in early March, the fiscal year hadn't ended, and we projected what we thought our estimated income would be. Fortunately, the giving for March exceeded our expectations, and so So our projection for the coming year is just a little low. Of course, we'd rather err on the conservative side, so that's fine. Expenses are based on the prior year's experience and input from the various ministry committees, such as the worship team or Sunday school teachers, the hospitality committee. They give us input into what they want for the coming year. And the finance committee uses this information and formulates a budget for the coming year. They then submit that budget to the elders for their approval. The elders have approved the 2020-2021 budget as presented by the finance committee. With the anticipation of a smaller budget for the current fiscal year, though, we have had to take steps to reduce projected expenditures for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. I'm not going to go through the budget in detail. I will highlight a few select items in anticipation of your questions. And if you have questions about the other items, you can direct them to me or wait until our virtual congregation meeting on Sunday, May the 3rd to ask them. So if you follow down the report under Children's Ministry in the category of Senior High, you'll see that those expenses have been reduced to reflect the change in the way the teens conduct their annual missions trips. In prior years, the teens were traveling to another area to do missions trips. In recent years, they've decided to stay locally and do local outreach for their missions, and this has greatly reduced the cost, so the budget reflects that. Regarding the church plant fund, we currently have a balance of $24,000 in that fund. As we won't be considering a new church plant until our congregation exceeds 200 people, and the fact that we may be partnering with other E4 churches to do church plants, we've decided to put a hold on putting additional funds into that account until sometime in the future. At least we do have a good nest egg in there should we see the growth needed to consider a new church plant. You see another category called community partnerships, and that's where we were supporting other organizations within the community that also did ministry locally. We're reevaluating this area, and these expenses may more properly fall under our missions committee as they relate to community outreach, but we hadn't made a final decision on that at the time of the budget. But we are convinced that we'll handle it differently going forward. We are reevaluating how we handle the Elders Discretionary Fund, and therefore we haven't budgeted a new amount for that until we finalize this policy. But please know that the elders do consider special requests and are constantly monitoring things to see if there are particular needs we do need to meet. You may also notice that we have zeroed out the budgets for the men and women's ministries. These ministries have been self-funding for years, meaning typically either the participants bear the cost for the activity or we receive a designated gift. And based on that history, we've budgeted these at zero for the coming year. The next category I'll call your attention to is the worship team budget. In past years, the worship team budget has included equipment purchases or upgrades, which are actually capital expenditures. The budget process has been changed to where this category now only contains what would be normal annual operating expenses. If capital expenditures are projected or needed, those will come out of our capital improvements budget. Another area that has seen an increase over the years, professional fees, as you follow on down. This increase is primarily due to the increase in online giving. If you give to BRCC through our website's online link or via ACH transaction or using a debit card, you do get credit for the full amount of your giving. However, the bank does assess the church a 2.5% to 3% fee on each of those transactions, which the church pays, so that's an expense to us. If you use your bank's online bill pay function to set up BRCC as a payee, and you submit your tithes that way, the bank sends us a check, and there's no fee assessed, so the full amount of your tithe goes towards supporting the ministry of the church. If you do choose to pay that way using the bill pay function, just please use the P.O. Box 522 Ruckersville, Virginia 22968 as the payee address. Further down, you'll see two categories, one for building maintenance and one for improvements. We have combined those two categories as they are hard to distinguish between each other. So going forward, there'll just be one category for that. And the budget reflects prior year's expenses. Another area you'll note a decrease in is salaries for the coming year. This is mainly due to Sandy's retirement. As we've not been able to find a person to fill that position, she'll be working 1 day a week at her currently hourly rate, but only to handle the church finances. Ryan, Page, and some other volunteers will be handling Sandy's other responsibilities. Ryan and Page have both been given a 2% cost of living increase for the coming fiscal year, but the net effect is a decrease in total salaries for the coming year. And this does affect some other categories such as payroll taxes and some of our insurance. The good news is we've balanced the budget for the coming year, and we are also in a position to handle some adversity. God has been gracious to us in the past years, and we've built up a reserve to help us weather some leaner times. In addition to the $21,000 balance we're carrying in our checking account, we have $89,712 in savings that's not designated for any specific purpose. There were some reductions in our savings during the past year as we spent funds to remove the swimming pool and thus solve a mold problem in that building, re-roof a portion of the fellowship hall to solve a leak problem in that building, and replace the guttering on the building, which also remediated some of our water and mold issues. The amount spent on each of those items is shown at the bottom of this report. You will also see the account balances for each of our funds at the bottom of the report, so you can note things like we do have a balance built up in our missions fund for missions outreach. Again, let me remind you that if you have questions about any of this, you can direct them to me or one of the other elders, or you can wait until our congregational meeting, our Zoom meeting with questions and answers on May the 3rd at 1 p.m. to ask those questions. Again, I want to thank you for your continued support and the way you've contributed to our finances. We feel we're in a good position to move forward, and we thank you for that. Blessings, people.